Apache woman with 3 children. Can we warm ourselves? The cowboy's response changed everything that night. Watch till the end for the powerful message. Subscribe for more emotional, true-style frontier stories. The night pressed down on the plains like a heavy weight, silent and merciless. The wind cut through the darkness, slipping through the cracks of a small wooden cabin that stood alone, miles from anywhere. Inside, a cowboy fed the fire one last log and pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders. Winter had come early that year, and out here, cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was deadly. He had learned that lesson long ago, and it had left scars deeper than the ones on his hands. Just as he turned to lock the door for the night, a sound stopped him cold. A knock, soft at first, almost swallowed by the wind. Then another, firmer this time. No one came out this far after sunset unless they were desperate or dangerous. His hand hovered near the rifle by the wall as he slowly opened the door. Standing in the weak glow of firelight was an Apache woman. Her dark hair was tangled and dusted with snow, her face drawn with exhaustion. 3 small children stood close behind her, pressed together for warmth, their thin blankets barely holding back the freezing air. The youngest could not have been more than 4, his hands red and trembling. The woman met the cowboy's eyes, not with anger or fear, but with something far worse, quiet desperation. "Can we warm ourselves?" she asked, her voice barely louder than the wind. The words struck him harder than any threat could have. He had heard pleas before, but never one so simple, so human. His eyes dropped to the children. They were shivering uncontrollably, lips turning blue, breaths shallow and fast. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his answer. Letting them in could bring trouble. Apache families were being hunted, blamed, driven from place to place. Anyone helping them risked becoming a target. He knew that. Every instinct told him to shut the door, to protect himself, to survive another night alone. But the cold didn't care about fear or politics. It only cared about time. The woman tightened her grip on the children, bracing herself for rejection. The cowboy felt something shift inside him, something he thought had frozen long ago. Without a word, he stepped back from the doorway. The firelight spilled out into the darkness, wrapping the children in its glow. "Come in," he said quietly. In that moment, he didn't know it yet, but the choice he made would echo far beyond that night, changing lives in ways none of them could imagine. The fire snapped and crackled as the cabin door closed behind them, sealing out the screaming wind. Warmth slowly filled the small room, and for the first time in days, the children stopped shivering. They stood frozen at first, unsure if the safety was real or something that might vanish if they moved too quickly. The cowboy watched as the oldest child carefully stepped closer to the fire, holding his little sister's hand, as if afraid the flames might disappear. The Apache woman said nothing. She stayed near the door, her back straight, eyes constantly moving, measuring every sound and shadow. Years of survival had taught her not to relax, not even for warmth. The cowboy noticed how she positioned herself between him and the children, ready to shield them if she had to. He poured water into a tin cup and offered it to her. After a moment's hesitation, she took it with both hands, nodding once in silent thanks. As the children warmed, their faces gained color. The youngest sighed softly and leaned against his mother's leg, finally letting exhaustion pull him towards sleep. The cowboy felt a tightness in his chest he hadn't expected. He turned away and added another log to the fire, pretending to focus on the flames. Then a sound cut through the quiet, faint but unmistakable, a horse. Somewhere beyond the cabin, a low neigh drifted through the night air. The Apache woman stiffened instantly. Her eyes widened, and fear flashed across her face like lightning. She rushed to the children, pulling them close, her voice dropping to a frantic whisper. "They are close," she said. "If they find us, they will take my sons, or kill us all." The cowboy's hand moved slowly toward his rifle. He had heard rumors of patrols and bounty hunters roaming these lands, tracking anyone they decided didn't belong. He stepped toward the window and peered through the frost-coated glass. The moonlight revealed faint shapes in the distance, shadows shifting where no shadows should be. Inside, the children sensed the tension and huddled together. The oldest looked up at the cowboy, eyes wide, searching his face for answers. For a moment, the cowboy felt the weight of the decision he had made. Letting them in had been the easy part. Protecting them would be something else entirely. He closed the window and turned back to the woman. "Stay by the fire," he said quietly. "No matter what you hear." The wind howled again, masking the sounds outside. But the danger was real and moving closer. The warmth in the cabin now carried a different kind of heat, the kind that comes before violence. The night was far from over, and whatever waited beyond, the door would test just how far. The cowboy was willing to go for four strangers who had asked for nothing more than a moment of warmth. The cowboy eased the cabin door open, just enough to peer into the darkness, the cold biting instantly at his face. Moonlight stretched across the snow-dusted ground, revealing fresh tracks circling the cabin, horseprints recent and deliberate. Whoever was out there wasn't passing through. They were searching. He closed the door slowly, careful not to let it creak, and rested his back against it for a moment, listening to the distant sounds of movement beyond the trees. Inside, the Apache woman watched him closely, reading the tension in his shoulders before he spoke a single word. The children had gone quiet, their earlier relief replaced by instinctive fear. The fire continued to burn, but its comfort now felt fragile, like a promise that could shatter at any second. "They are hunting us," the woman said at last, her voice steady but heavy with truth. She moved closer to the fire, not for warmth, but so the children could hear her. "My people were attacked before dawn. Those who ran were followed. Those who fell were not spared." Her eyes lowered, and for a moment the strength in her posture cracked. "Their father died buying us time." The words settled into the room like ash. The cowboy felt his jaw tighten. Loss was a language he understood all too well. He had buried a wife and child years ago, victims of a fever that swept through the plains without mercy. Since then he had learned to live alone, believing isolation was safer than attachment. But standing there listening to her story, he realized safety had never protected him from pain, only from purpose. Outside, a branch snapped. The woman flinched, instinctively pulling the children closer. The cowboy moved between them and the door, lifting his rifle with quiet resolve. He didn't know how many were out there, or how desperate they might be, but he knew one thing with absolute clarity. He would not hand these children back to the darkness. "No one touches you tonight," he said, his voice low and certain. The oldest child looked up at him, disbelief and hope mixing in his eyes. The woman studied the cowboy's face, searching for doubt and finding none. Slowly, she inclined her head, not in submission but in trust. The cowboy checked the rifle, counting the bullets, measuring the odds. He positioned himself near the door, where the shadows were thickest. Every sense sharpened. The cabin, once a lonely shelter, had become a line drawn in the snow. As the night pressed closer, and the silence outside grew tense and unnatural, the cowboy understood that whatever happened next would define more than just survival. It would decide what kind of man he truly was. The first gunshot shattered the silence just before dawn, echoing across the frozen plains like a warning to the world. The cowboy fired from the doorway, the rifle's recoil slamming into his shoulder as a shadow dropped in the distance. Horses screamed, men shouted, and chaos erupted in the darkness. Snow kicked up as bullets tore through the night air, but the cowboy held his ground, moving with calm precision, born from years of hard living. Inside the cabin, the Apache woman shielded her children, whispering prayers she barely remembered. Her body curved protectively over them. Every shot made her flinch, yet she did not scream. She trusted the man standing between her family and death, even though she had known him for less than a night. The fire burned low, casting long, trembling shadows on the walls, as if the cabin itself were holding its breath. The attackers did not expect resistance. They had come looking for fear and weakness, not a man willing to fight for people who were not his own. When a second shot rang out, closer this time, the cowboy stepped forward without hesitation. His boots crunched in the snow as he forced the threat farther from the cabin, using the darkness and terrain to his advantage. Minutes felt like hours, every breath a gamble, every movement a choice between life and loss. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the noise faded. Hooves thundered away into the distance, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the plains. The cowboy remained still for a long moment, listening, counting the seconds, waiting for any sign of return. Only the wind answered him. When the sun finally broke the horizon, pale light spilled across the land, revealing the quiet aftermath of the night. The danger had passed. Slowly, he lowered his rifle and turned back toward the cabin. Inside, the Apache woman looked up, disbelief written across her face as she realized they were still alive. She stepped outside, the morning light warming her skin, and drew a long, shaky breath. "You did not have to do this," she said softly. The cowboy shook his head. "Sometimes you do," he replied. The children emerged one by one, blinking against the sunlight, their fear replaced with cautious wonder. The oldest smiled for the first time, a small, fragile thing, but real. The woman met the cowboy's eyes, gratitude and sorrow mingling in her expression. "You gave us more than warmth," she said. "You gave us tomorrow." He watched them stand there, alive because of a choice made in a moment of compassion. That night, a simple question, asked in desperation, had turned a lonely cabin into a place of hope. And though the plains would remain harsh and unforgiving, something within the cowboy had changed forever. Warmed by a fire far stronger than any burning log,